For this honor to be here on the first anniversary of this university, which is a great experiment, because this university will lay the foundation for India to become, through the educational system, the Vishwa Guru that we were once upon a time. When you enter Parliament House and you move towards the central hall where the Constituent Assembly sat and passed the Constitution, as you enter the door, there is a big sculpted shloka from our ancient scriptures. Aham nija paroveti ganana lagu chetasam udar charita namatu vasudeva kutumbakam. Don't think in terms of this is mine and this is not yours. Don't think for small things. Think the whole world belongs to you. That is the focus of the philosophy of Hindus. What we have to teach the world is that religion always consists of two parts. Part one is what God revealed to you, which we call in our Sanskrit as Shruti. That is a revealed knowledge which we preserve through the centuries without amendment. And then there is something we call as Smriti, which is a code of conduct, like Manu Smriti, Yajnavalkya Smriti, Mitakshara Smriti. And today, if there is any replacement for Smriti, because Smriti can be, unlike Shruti, can be amended, changed, scrapped, replaced, like Manu Smriti was replaced by Yajnavalkya Smriti. So today, what replaces all this for the purpose of a modern India? It's the Constitution of India. And this is what we ultimately respect, irrespective of the religion. And in the Constitution, we have laid down certain principles of governance and fundamental rights. The fundamental right on religion is there. But it says in the Constitution that even your fundamental right to worship is subject to reasonable restrictions. No fundamental right in our Constitution, whether for speaking, writing, traveling, is absolute. It is subject to reasonable restrictions. And these reasonable restrictions include things like, in the case of fundamental rights to speak and travel and so on, your sovereignty of the country. Your exercise of your fundamental rights should not affect the sovereignty of the country. National security, morality, public order, health. These are restrictions put on it, and that is why our religion, if anybody claims, cannot be touched or wrong. The Constitution provides the government the authority to amend even your religion according to these reasonable restrictions. When it came recently, the question of triple talaq, many clerics said, this is our religion, you can't touch it. But we argued in the Supreme Court that triple talaq violates the constitutional principle of equality between all citizens. That is Article 14. And that therefore it is immoral. And since it is immoral, we can impose restrictions on the Islamic religion, and the Supreme Court can declare triple talaq as illegal, unconstitutional. And that is what happened. It was declared. Constitution also has declared untouchability as illegal, as unconstitutional. So we are in a process, must understand the core principles of religion. They will not be touched. But when it comes to the practice of religion, it must conform to modernity, and modernity is described in the Constitution. Today, this is what we have to teach the world, that we, Hindus particularly, and by Hindus I mean all religions which are born in India. In fact, the Constitution also in Article 25 defines Hindu as someone who is not a Muslim, who is not a Christian, who is not a Zoroastrian. That means all religions born in India, we regard as part of the large Hindu family. Our own Hindu religion, we call as Sanatana Dharma. And the word Hindu it's a term to describe those religions which are born in India, which means Sanatana Dharma, Sikhism, Buddhism, Jainism. So these religions are born in India. The prophets, the gurus were born in India, and they modernized and amended the existing conservative views and developed a modern theology of that period, and therefore they are treated as separate religions, but they were born in India. And all these religions born in India have one fundamental principle which we can teach the whole world. We declare that all religions lead to God, without exception. Christianity and Islam does not say that. Islam says it is only my way or the highway. And same thing with Islam and Christianity, both believe that their path to God is the only path. On the other hand, in our religions born in India, we are consistently taking the position that all religions lead to God. So this is something that even the Christians and the Islamic scholars must begin to accept, that religion is personal, but we also believe and respect other religions because they also lead to God. We may have our views which leads faster to God. It's like saying going by an ordinary road and going by the turnpike. There are two ways to travel. And then we may take that view, but to say that you are denied the darshan of God because of this. So this is something that the world has to learn, that the core theology of a religion is sacred, but it must not interfere in the way others worship. And that is why India has never gone out of the country. From India, no religion has gone out to actively convert other people to their own religions. And if somebody on their own want to convert without inducement, there is no difficulty whatsoever. But we say that all religions must coexist. And we have demonstrated that in India over thousands of years. The Parsis were the Zoroastrians. When Islam attacked Persia, which was the country of Zoroastrians at that time, those who worshipped the fire, they wiped them all out there. That the religion was wiped out. But some people escaped and came to India. And they were known as Parsis. And they have lived in India. They were invited, welcomed by the Shankaracharya of Dwarka, and given a place in Gujarat. They adopted our customs, and today that community exists. Nowhere else in the world, but only in India. And they have prospered. And we don't even recognize them different from us. The Chief Justice of India, Justice Kapadia, was a Parsi. The Commander-in-Chief of the Army, Manik Shah, was a Parsi. The Attorney General of India, Mr. Soli Sarabji, was a Parsi. The Air Force Chief, Fali Major, was a Parsi. There are so many Parsis, but we don't recognize them as anything different from us. The same thing with the Jews. The Jews came to India after being persecuted everywhere else. But in India, we built the synagogues for them in Cochin and Bombay, and they lived as Jewish community without being touched. And so when Israel was formed, the first resolution after adopting the constitution that they adopted was, thank you India, the only country which did not persecute the Jews. So this tradition is something we can teach the world. When you say Vishwaguru, that tradition can only come when you feel personally that all religions lead to God. And this interpretation is what is necessary. We have also, as these young girls and boys today beautifully recited the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita has so many messages that even a lifetime is not enough to fully understand it. It teaches you how to get rid of stress. How does Krishna Bhagavan tell you to get rid of stress? He says, remember, in life you have freedom, only one freedom, and that is freedom of action. If it is good action, you will get karmas, good karmas. If it's bad action, you will get bad karmas. And you will have to either enjoy the good karmas or suffer the bad karmas. And if you have committed too many bad karmas, then it will transfer to the next life also. So that is why sometimes you find very good people suffering a lot and very bad people prospering a lot. And the reason is that the very good people have come with a bank account of bad karmas. And therefore they have to exhaust it. And that's why therefore Krishna says you must learn to willingly suffer these things. And therefore, that is first principle. The second principle Krishna initiates is that you have right to action, but you have no right to expect the fruit of that action. You can work for the fruit of an action, but when that fruit will come, in what form you will get the fruit for your action, that will be decided by me. And you will be surprised to know one of the Bloomberg business magazines reported 2 years ago that now American corporations have begun to teach this philosophy. They may not call it Bhagavad Gita, but they are translated that. And why do you get stress? Because you think you are responsible for the results. And what Krishna tells you is, you are not responsible for the results. You do good action, you'll get good karmas, it will accumulate, and you'll be blessed in some way or the other. Some reward will come to you. If you do good karmas, you will see that in some form your life is suddenly transformed for the better. So once you remove your ego, that I am doing it, which is what Krishna tells you, then you become a happy person, because you say, I will act. So people ask me, how do you dare to catch all these people and put them in jail? So I said, that is my action. Whether they go to jail or not, that is not in my hands. That is Krishna's hands. So, and he has not failed me, because I'm sending a lot of people to jail. And in fact, somebody jokingly told me that very soon a particular political party can have its working committee meeting inside TR jail. So many of them will be sometimes. So therefore, if you develop this philosophy and you teach your young children, don't berate them for bad results, tell them only to try again, saying that that's all you have. You've done your best, you're satisfied you've done your best, doesn't matter of the results. I myself know once that there was a lot of peer pressure. So I also wanted to join the Indian Navy. So I applied for the National Defense Academy NDA. I sat for the exam, and lo and behold, in my favorite subject, Mathematics I failed. I still don't know, somebody must have exchanged my answer books or something. But I failed, I felt very bad. But later on, when I look back and say what an idiot I was to take this exam, God saved me by failing me. So bad results also lead to good ends. And when you have that philosophy, you become a happy person. And the ultimate is how to be happy. Why is it that so many rich Americans come to India and spend time in our ashrams? Ramdev's ashram, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar's ashram. I have met them in Sri Sri Ravi Shankar's ashram and I asked them, why have you come? You got everything, you are millionaires. I mean, after I got introduced, I came to know they were millionaires. They said, maybe we have millions of dollars, but we are not happy. And we've heard that in India, we can learn how to be happy. Otherwise, we know it's good. They are learning today in the West yoga from us. Very soon they will know more Sanskrit than we do. Because we are so secular that we are afraid to learn Sanskrit in our country. But in London, and you can know this from reading, going to through your Google, the search engine, St. John's School, London, which is one of the most prestigious schools, has now decided to teach Sanskrit to young boys and girls of their school from the age of 6 to 11. And the reason given is that when you recite Sanskrit shlokas, it generates vibrations in body and leads to brain development for superior poverty. Now, you also can read from the Google that NASA had a article by Rick Briggs in the Journal of Artificial Intelligence, which said that after years of research, we came to the conclusion that the most computer-friendly language for storing knowledge is Sanskrit. And therefore, Sanskrit will be, in future, used in artificial intelligence. So the world is now beginning to understand the importance of this. Einstein had told, he says, I respect India because they taught us how to count. These numbers, we invented it. Decimal, we invented it. Algebra, geometry, calculus, all this was done in a phase of history when we were not only the most spiritual country, but we were also the most economically developed country. Many years ago, when I was teaching at Harvard, there's a big pond there called Fresh Pond near a town called Belmont, a suburb of Boston. And they had, the municipality had put a road around that pond so you could go for a nice walk. So while I was walking, I saw a signboard saying, here stood a Tudor ice company which used to export ice to India. So Massachusetts was exporting ice to India from Boston. So I said, my God, why should any country export ice to India? And this is what, 1636. The signboard was for 1636. So I went again through Google and later on through Amazon, and I found there was a book called Tudor Ice Company. And I read it. And I was surprised to learn that American traders from Massachusetts used to regularly go by ship to Kanchipuram. And there they used to buy spices, cloth, so many other things, and bring them back. So one day, the king of Kanchipuram was a Chola king. He called them all and said, how are you keeping? Is everything fine with you? They said, yes, everything is fine. But we are sad about one thing, that we have to come with empty ships and then buy here and go back. Can you not buy something from us? So he said, in India we produce everything. Why should I think of buying anything from you? So they said, no, something you should buy so that ships don't have to come empty. So he said, I've never seen snow. He said, I've never seen ice. And in Himalayas you get ice, he said, but I have to go all that distance and leave my kingdom. But I heard that in your country ice falls from the sky. So therefore, if you sell ice to me, I will buy. So in winter, this fresh pond used to freeze. And then they put sawdust on it and then cut it and put these blocks of ice in a ship and take it all the way to India. So the first export from the United States of India from the United States to India was ice. That was the stage of economy between the two countries. And to see today what a difference that has happened. We have to recover that. Harvard in 1936, when they were celebrating their 300th year, they invited scholars from all over the world. And the person they invited from China was called Dr. Hu Shi, a very well-known poet, who was president of the Beijing University. And they said to all speakers, you select the topic that you think is most important to you. And you can still read it by going to Harvard's Whitener Library or even going to Google where extracts have been published. Dr. Hu Shi's speech was titled The Indianization of China, a case of peaceful borrowing of 300 years. Now, I was surprised when I saw this, so I went and read it. And he describes how the Indians came, the Hindus as he called them, they called them Hindu, came to China and taught them so many things, including they taught them what we now know as karate. It was Dharma, a bhikshu from Kanchipuram, who went all the way to Shaolin in China, set up an ashram, and since they were being attacked, so therefore he had to teach them peaceful way of defending oneself. And so this Kalaripattu of Kerala was taught to them, which the Chinese called as Wushi. And Wushi in Chinese characters, if you read it as a Japanese, because Japanese also use Chinese characters, but they pronounce it differently. So if you read the Chinese characters for Wushu in Japanese, then it is called karate. So karate is now being taught in India, and we think the Japanese have given it to us when we gave it to the Chinese, who then passed it on to the Japanese. So like that, there are Cambodia. You go to Cambodia, you go to Bali, you see that nowhere conquest took place, but sheer ideas, sheer preachings, and a peaceful way, they became converts. So therefore, this religion, this culture, we have to recognize. UNESCO recently tabulated 46 civilizations which have existed in the world and concluded that 45 of them, like the Roman, Greece, Egyptian, Mesopotamian, Babylon, all have disappeared. Only one of that 46 is still continuing and living, and that is the Hindu tradition of India. The culture of this country. So this ancient culture is based on a number of principles. First principle is that we do not worship wealth in isolation. Wealth, progress, material progress, has to be blended with or synchronized with spiritual advancement. And wealth is not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. This stark fact came to my knowledge when I was a student at Harvard. And the first day I went to class, the professor was a little late. So sitting next to me was an American student, and he asked me, "Can I ask you a question before the professor comes?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Yes, what is it?" He said, "Tell me why Indians felt compelled to follow Mahatma Gandhi." So I asked him, why, what is wrong with Mahatma Gandhi? Why should we follow him? He was leading us to freedom. He said, no, I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned with the fact the man was not properly dressed. How can you follow him? He just has a piece of cloth around him, and his legs are bare, his body is bare, and you're following him. So I said, you mean in your country, Mahatma Gandhi cannot be a political leader? He said, no, if in our country he comes and does politics, we will have him arrested for indecent exposure. So, but you see today, the leaders of United States, Europe, how well dressed they are. I mean, there's never been a tradition in them that somebody just with a piece of cloth, what we popularly call as a langoti, that kind of coverage. He led millions of people and made them do things which they normally would not do, and that is on non-violence. So, and of course, got us freedom. This is reflected in our spiritual leaders also. See how well dressed the Pope is, how well dressed the Imam of Makkah is, how well dressed is the other religions' spiritual leaders are. But see our spiritual leaders, so simply dressed. One Bhagavad Kapra, they may be multi-millionaires like Ramdev, but still he only wears Bhagavad. And that is the veneration that we have for non-wealth qualities. The highest quality in our country is not, what in Sanskrit you would say is Gyan and Tyag. You see, knowledge and sacrifice. These are two things we value. And that's why we remember those of our leaders who have made sacrifices. Rana Pratap did not get us victory. But we worship him because he sacrificed everything for the freedom of country. We worship Guru Tegh Bahadur because he gave his head so that people can have the freedom of practicing their religion. And he refused to convert. So was Guru Gobind Singh, who lost 2 of his sons this way. And you will find this in all the religions born in India, that we venerated people who made great sacrifices. And we of course also celebrated those who got us great victories like the Vijayanagaram Empire, like Shivaji, in South we had Rani Chennamma, who ultimately of course lost. So many which is not recorded in our history books, because we need to revise our history books, and we intend to do it as soon as we find sufficient number of scholars to write the correct history of India. All this bogus things, all these bogus concepts which they have filled into our brain, that there is Aryan, there is Dravidian. Previously Dravidians used to rule the whole of India, then the Aryans came from Europe through Khyber Pass and beat them and drove them south. All nonsense, because according to our modern science called DNA, genetics, that says that all Indians have the same DNA. From Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Dibrugarh to Jamnagar, all Indians have the same DNA. They may look differently in terms of complexion, but that's due to sunlight. It's got nothing to do with race. Race is decided only by DNA. And DNA of all Indians is the same. DNA of all castes are also the same. Never we had the Varna system based on birth. And that Krishna says in Gita. Very few people know that Krishna has said it is based on gunas. If you pursue knowledge and you make the sacrifice of your material life, you become a Brahmin. You need not be born of Brahmin parents. Vishwamitra was not born of Brahmin parents, he was born of Kshatriya parents. But he became Maharishi. Valmiki was born as a Dalit, and he became a Maharishi who wrote the Ramayana. Ved Vyasa's mother was a fisherwoman. Kalidasa was a Vanavasi. And Brahmins who became Brahmins and then they did wrong actions, they were killed. Ravan was a Brahmin. He was not born in Lanka, by the way, as Karnanidhi thinks. He was born near Delhi in a place in Noida called Basrak. There's a village called Basrak. And he did tapas in Mansarovar, and Shiva Bhagwan gave him a var. And that with that Varam, he went to Sri Lanka, which was then being ruled by Guber, who was his cousin, defeated him and became the king of Lanka. So, therefore, all these have been today misinterpreted. Many of you in California are fighting on these textbooks. It is all a deliberate mischief. I congratulate all those people who are putting up this fight. And I hope the university, Silicon Andhra University, will ensure that, not that you won't teach those books, but you will also teach the counter to those books. We must learn to counter arguments. The great civilization of India has now to be translated in modern language. And this modernity is what we want. So I would say, in conclusion, 5 things we have to inculcate in our youngsters. Number 1, he must develop a clear concept of what we call as asmita. Asmita means identity. We are certainly citizens of India because the Constitution says you are citizens of India. And we hold the Indian passport. But asmita is your connection with the land. And that connection with the land is through your ancestry. And DNA says that even Muslims and Christians, their DNA is the same as my DNA, which means they also have the same forefathers as I do, and they belong to the same soil as I do, and that we are one people. So, therefore, this asmita concept should be very clear. The second thing that you must have inculcated, and any education curriculum must do, and that is a correct history of India. And that correct history should remove everything that Macaulay wanted to put you in an inferiority complex. What a great nation we were, what a united nations we were. We were one country, but we were a decentralized country. We didn't believe in concentration of power. We believed in village panchayats ruling. And only when there is a dispute, a war, everybody will come together. When Mahabharata took place, Mahabharata, you see, 3,000 kings came. Every part of India sent an army. The only person who did not participate in the war was a Travancore Raja. He came with the army, and then he saw what was happening. He said, I don't want to participate in this brother killing brother, but I will not run away. So I will become a cook for both armies, and I will prepare the food. So he set up camps and ensured that both the Kauravas and the Pandavas armies got the food. But all 3,000 kings of India came because it was Mahabharata and it was a national war. When the Greeks came to our borders, Chanakya, he decided that entire India will take its army. Although the Greek historians wrote that the Alexander and all these people got victories, nothing of the kind. There's no record of that in our history. That's wrong history. But it was actually Chandragupta who went and defeated him. Of course, some of our books even continue to say Chandragupta Maurya. They can't make a difference between Chandragupta Maurya and Chandragupta Gupta. So correct history of how we became the world's biggest, most powerful, economic, scientific power is something we have to recognize and make others recognize. The other day, some people were laughing that in a scientific conference in Delhi, that some scientists said that we had already a concept of aeroplane, and Ravan in fact had Pushpak, and therefore we knew about planes. But there is an ancient document which I have seen with my own eyes, which is called Vimana Shastra. And I was curious that those days there was no petrol known, what fuel was being used according to Vimana Shastra. Whether there was Pushpak and all, I'm not going into that. But Vimana Shastra is in Sanskrit, and I wanted to check what is the fuel that was used. And I was surprised to find that the fuel that was used for designing a plane, according to Vimana Shastra, was mercury. And so I asked a scientist, is it possible that mercury can become a fuel? He said that's the fuel of the future, because 1 drop of mercury generates more energy than 10 barrels of oil. But we have not found the technology to do it. Maybe they had the technology, I don't know. But who can now doubt that there is something? There are so many things about we have been told about history which now modern science tells us is not true. For instance, the British used to laugh about Saraswati River. They said the most number of mention of any river in the Vedas is Saraswati. But there is no Saraswati. Where is Saraswati? But we soon found out by modern technology of Earth satellite mapping and so on, finally have located Saraswati River, and it had gone underground, so we are digging it up, and now we are opening a riverbed so that Saraswati can flow again in India. Same thing with Dwarka. Dwarka, as they said, where is Dwarka? There's no sign of any civilization of Dwarka. But Purana says that Dwarka sunk into the sea. In 1996, the great S.R. Rao of Archaeological Survey of India found that the remains of Dwarka are under the sea. And so the project now is to lift it all from the remains from the sea and reconstruct it on land as a museum. So these aspects of our ancient history have to be taught, that gives you that asmita. And that history, the correct teaching of history, becomes very important. And no knowledge of history is possible without the knowledge of Sanskrit. And finally, I'll say that our economic philosophy, which will not make you unhappy, which will not lead to exploitation, is that which pursues material prosperity with balancing or with synchronization of spiritual values. If you decide to go for learning and teach people, that is the highest thing you can do. But that status you will get only if you sacrifice all your earthly needs. You live simply as possible. That was the tradition originally of rishis and Brahmins. If you were a ruler of the country, you certainly you could enjoy the great wealth of the palace, but your job is to defend the country, not to make policy. For policy, you have to go to the learned people, the Brahmins, and ask them, what is the policy I should follow? And with the concurrence of the knowledge, the learned people, the king would act. That was not so in Europe. Europe, the monarchs are everything. Even dispensing justice, the monarchs used to do. They could chop off anybody's head, but not in our society. It was decentralization of power. You can make wealth, you can pursue wealth, but you will be respected in society not because of your wealth, but how much you gave away in philanthropy. That is how the system was built, so that we can have decentralization of power. So these aspects together, and finally, we always fought whenever it became, there was no other alternative. We have always allowed for the possibility of a compromise. But in the end, when war was necessary, it was fought. Krishna, when all the armies were ranged against each other, still went to Duryodhana and said, give 5 villages, for one each for the Pandavas, and take Hastinapur and take Indraprastha. So Duryodhana said, I will not even give the land which can be fitted on the on the tip of a needle. And he said, I will not agree. So therefore war was declared. Draupadi was very angry with Krishna. Why did you do it? He said, I wanted to show the whole world this man wants war. Now so many people will die, it will be justified. But this had to be demonstrated. So till the last you don't give up for a peaceful solution. But that fool, the Duryodhana, he not only lost Hastinapur and Indraprastha, but he lost his life also, and because of 5 villages. So you see these richness in our religion should be brought. Another richness that comes out is the gender equality. Women have dominated history in the past. They made decisions, some good, some bad. Kaikeyi made a decision that Rama should go to the forest. But in any other country, the queen couldn't dictate anything. But there she dictated. And she said, you made a promise, you must keep it. And to rescue Sita, a war had to be waged. Rama went. He could have avoided the war if Sita had relented. Because Hanuman went to Lanka and found her and said, sit on my shoulder, I'll take you to Rama. She said, no, I will not come. Because there are so many other women here who have been enslaved. So Rama must come and kill Ravan. Then only I'll come. It is that woman's determination which led to the Ramayana. And of course, a lot of misinterpretations are being done, but it doesn't matter. The truth will come. And what about the Mahabharata? It was because Draupadi said that I will not rest till the blood of Dushasan comes to me for me to have a shampoo of my hair with it. And that she stuck to that. And because of that, ultimately, that war took place. Women's gender equality comes out even from Brahma's cabinet. All the important portfolios are with women. Defense is with Durga, finance is with the Lakshmi, education is Saraswati. What are the male gods got? I searched and found information broadcasting given to Narad Muni. So this was the status we had. This is not that women must also do equal physical work. The women were qualified to do things. And when all the gods failed, they went to Durga and pleaded with her to defeat the Asura, to take a form and defeat the Asura. And she then took the form of Kali and finished off all the Asuras. So this is the tradition which we have to teach our youngsters, and not to get brainwashed by the westernized interpretation of our tradition. That would be the great contribution of our university. You see, teach both points of view, but how to negate the point of view which is not true by arguments, that also must be treated, and that is called in our system as Shastrat. And when Shankaracharya wanted to make India return to Hinduism, he went all over the country having a debate. He converted people by saying that if I win the debate, I will convert to your religion, that is Buddhism. And if you would lose the debate, you convert to it. So the first Sringeri Acharya came after he defeated Mandana Mishra in Bihar. And he went all the way to Kashmir and ultimately set up these 4 mutts, and the Hindu religion returned. But never during the period, whether it was Hindu religion, whether it's Jain religion, whether it is Buddhist religion or Sikh religion, any of the religious works of any of the competing religions was ever burnt. Never in the history. Europe is full of examples of how other religious books were burnt. So too in the Muslim world. But in our country, never we had competition with Buddhism or Jainism. Never these were, the holy books were even touched, and they were respected. So this civilization, the facets of it, and how it has remained. You see, we have remained one country, and we have remained almost 80% what we were 100%. Of the 100% we are today 80%, 82% including the Sikhs and other Indic religions. And how did this happen? And this was asked to me by a student of mine at Harvard, who was a Saudi Arabian. He said, what is the secret that after 800 years of Islamic rule and 200 years of Christian rule through the British, you are still 80% Hindu? I said, why? So he said, because Islam went to Persia. 15 years we finished off the Zoroastrians, and Iran became 100%. That is, Persia was renamed as Iran. Iran became 100% Islam. Went to Mesopotamia, Babylon, which are now called as Iraq. In 17 years, we converted these two countries to 100% Islam. Same thing with Egypt. In 21 years, converted them to 100% Islam. The Christians went to Europe. In 50 years, they converted everybody to Christianity in 50 years. But in your country, 800 years of Islamic rule, 200 years of Christian rule, you're still 82%. What is the secret? The secret is known in our history. It's every part of India was in a state of revolt and fought. And right in the end, when after Guru Gobind Singh had issued had broken the back of the Mughals, the Marathas were filling the gap when the British came. And at that tired state, with superior weapons, they continued for 200 years. But in the end, the civilization has survived. And this civilization now needs a renaissance. We can't accept everything of the past. There are things which we have to get rid of. And particularly in the Smriti literature, we have to redefine it completely. All these caste and divisions which have come in, which has no substance in history, must go. And we must bring all our people. And I would say that those who say that the ancestors of our ancestors are also Hindus, they become part of a Hindustan Republic. And therefore, the process of uniting must go on. And that process is now slowly happening in India. I'm very happy to see that many of the things which were wronged, we were wronged in history, now being corrected. And it's only with that clarity of mind which the younger generation must be focused, the clarity of mind brought in the younger generation, so that the future, the civilization gets vibrant and becomes modernized and has a renaissance. That's the goal of a university. Thank you very much.
This is the time for Q&A, Dr. Swamy.
Thank you, Dr. Swamy. Where are you? Who's there? Yeah, what's that?
For the survival of Sanatana Dharma in India, what, according to you, are the threats, and what are the things that immediately need to be addressed, and what is the role of NRIs for the survival?
Well, the threat essentially arises from the educational system. I would put terror as a second factor, and confusion about what secularism actually means is the third factor. But unless you know, your mind is clear, you see, you have a mindset which knows exactly what you are, there will always be a threat. No matter how many people you are, maybe 100, now we are 125 or 28 billion people. I mean, to crores, excuse me, 128 crores, 1.28 billion people. And but that number means nothing if your mind is not has a oneness in it. If you, for example, see 1,000 goats at one place and one tiger comes. Now goats have the numbers, but on seeing the tiger they'll all run because their mind is like that. Same thing if your strength is tremendous strength. You've got lots of weapons, this, that. But your mind is not made up. You don't have a mindset, as it's called, a chetana. Then that power is useless to you. In a circus, for example, there will be 5 strong, well-fed lions. One thin ringmaster will enter the circus, cage, and he'll start ordering the lions, climb up on the bench. They'll all climb up. Then he'll say, open your mouth. They will all open their mouth. He'll put his head in each one of them. Not one of the lions will bite his head off. Why? Because he's been brought up that way. For as a cub, the lion has been taught to obey. Otherwise he won't get his food. So it becomes conditioned. He doesn't know its own strength. If I may be permitted to make a joke about my friend Manmohan Singh, I used to ask him, listen, you are sitting in the most powerful chair in the country. Why are you scared of one Italian woman? Can you explain? There was no explanation. It is the way he was brought up. A very, shy, defensive person. He didn't have that mindset. I'm a ruler of India, and I must assert. I give you an example of 2G spectrum. He gave the correct advice to Raja in writing that you must auction the licenses, because now the price of spectrum has gone up because the number of mobile cell phones has gone up to 700 million in our country, and there's a big demand for spectrum. So you auction it. And Mr. Raja writes back saying that I shall not auction it because I have already got clearance from higher authorities. Is there anybody of a higher authority than the Prime Minister? And when the Prime Minister got this letter, what should he have done? Should have sacked Mr. Raja. Said, you are not going to be my minister. But he didn't do it, because he also understood what is higher authority. That is the mindset. And I would think that if your mindset changes and you forget all your differences, you may have differences for many other things. You may say, I don't like avakai and I like maudu, and you can fight over that. The Tamils produce better pickles than Andhrites, that kind of. But when it comes to national unity, in the face of the enemy, or in the face of so many wrong things that happen, there should be unity. That mindset, we had it in the ancient days, and it has to come. Of course, we are now being attacked by terror. And this latest example of Rohingyas is the example. They are a terrorist force. In 1944, their leaders had told Muhammad Ali Jinnah in writing, by meeting him, that we are part of Pakistan. And when the Constituent Assembly of Burma was set up, their 2 nominated members, they argued there also that we are part of East Pakistan. And that was now, which has now become Bangladesh. And they are penetrated today by Lashkar-e-Toiba and so many other things. But look at the number of people, it's orchestrated all over the world. And they are saying, no, we have to take them. Why? When Bangladesh is refusing to take them, it's not a question of Hindu-Muslim. The Muslim countries don't want to take them. Pakistan doesn't want to take them. Why India should be treated as a dharamshala that anybody can come with his bedroll and put it there and go to sleep? It's not this concept has to be fought. But people are afraid that it will be typecast as communist. Madan Mohan Malviya contacted Ambedkar, who was the tallest scheduled caste leader and the most educated also, and said that Gandhi is not going to get out of this. He says that once this happens, then there is no India. It's the end of India. I don't want to live. So I am on a faster retreat. So in 32, Ambedkar took the step of writing to the British that we don't want separate electorate. And once that happened, and Gandhi broke his fast, a pledge was made to the scheduled caste community that when we become free, we will reserve the seats in Parliament Originally they said for 10 years, and Ambedkar also agreed for 10 years. But it has not been possible for the governments of the last 70 years to remove that, I think the total amount is 14%. 14% of the seats are reserved for scheduled class plus for scheduled tribes. And they've not been able to remove it. But we have found great advantage that out of this 14%, we have been able to build a large number of scheduled caste leaders today, because they have had the option of coming into to parliament, and in the process they started becoming assimilated by the rest of the population. Today we have a scheduled caste president. Nobody will know when you go and see him. He didn't come through reservations, by the way. There's no reservation for the president's post. And he's an educated man, he's a lawyer. He was in parliament, he came through one of the scheduled caste quotas, and he became knowledgeable of the parliamentary system. And today we have him there. We have scheduled caste in various other places. We have ministers or scheduled caste people. Nobody even knows that they are scheduled caste. Ram Vilas Paswan is an example. So we have done that, and I don't think that part of the argument I will accept, because it is not based on the correct facts. But the reservation in jobs is a problem. And the problem is that for scheduled castes we did it because they were all kept out of the educational system. And even Ambedkar, you see, he had to change his name to Ambedkar. His teacher was a Brahmin teacher who said, "You are a very bright fellow, you must go abroad to further studies. But there will be so much resistance. Your name is," he had a name, I think, Mahar. Yes, Maha something. No, Bhimrao is his first name. Bhimrao Mahar. Yes, Mahar. So he said that you will be identified as scheduled caste, so you take my name. So he became Ambedkar, taking his teacher's name. He went to Columbia. He got a PhD in economics, in monetary work, and it is very classic work by that period, and still worth reading. He went to London, and he got a law degree, came to India, and Sardar Patel made him chairman of the drafting committee of the Constitution. And he was the one who moved the amendments, he was the one who moved the provisions of the Constitution, all that. He did a first-class job. But the prejudice continued, and he was not given Bharat Ratna by the Congress government. It is our government, the Janata government, which came in 1990, which gave him. In fact, they didn't even give it to Sardar Patel. Sardar Patel did not get Bharat Ratna till I, as law minister, myself signed the file and sent to the Prime Minister, Mr. Chandrasekhar. And he had told me that Republic Day is coming, who shall we give Bharat Ratna to? I said, let me see who all got it. And I found Sardar Patel's name not there. The Bharat Ratna award was instituted in 1954. And Jawaharlal Nehru got the first Bharat Ratna. And I looked at the file, and it says, I, Jawaharlal Nehru, hereby nominate Jawaharlal Nehru for Bharat Ratna, signed Jawaharlal Nehru. So, and at no stage, and in terms of education, Jawaharlal Nehru was no match for Ambedkar. In fact, he went to Cambridge and failed there. I don't know of any member of the Nehru family who has passed an exam. You see? But they called him Pandit. And the man who was a Pandit, Ambedkar, was just called Bhimrao. You see? So these prejudices are there, and they still continue. So I don't think we will remove the reservation for scheduled caste. These what they call backward class was a VP Singh mischief, and we cannot withdraw it because it's been given. But we can know 2-3 things. One, that public sector only and colleges which take government money only, they have to have reservations. If you have a private college without taking any money from the government, you don't have to have reservations. And similarly, in private sector, there is no reservation for jobs. And private sector is getting larger and larger, and the public sector is smaller. So the solution to the problem is build so many universities that nobody is denied admission. And therefore, for that you will also have to have lots of teachers. So you need a revolutionary approach to the educational sector of our country, and I think we are working on it. And I hope in a period of 10 years it will reach a situation where reservation means nothing. When I was teaching at IIT Delhi, the scheduled caste students used to tell me, somehow please, remove this reservation. I said, you yourself asking? He said, yes, because we are all the time suspected, or we are anyway going to get it because of reservation. We want to compete too. And so the process, we may bring in new legislation, say that if one family has got it once, you should not get it again. That sort of thing we can have. But ultimately, we must build large number of universities. We must have 1,000 universities in our country, not 400. And thereby, then nobody will be denied admission to colleges and for courses which they want. And that is the way to do it, because once you give something in India, to take it back in a democracy is very tough. So what you can make it is redundant and make the growth of the private sector much larger, especially the small and medium industries which usually use a much larger share of labor. You develop them, and that's how you change the policy.
Also, there is economic way of uplifting the poor. That can be done, remove the reservation and make it like a certain, low certain income level. They should be given it.
Then you will find all furgy income certificates. That is not even on this scheduled caste now, lots of fraud certificates are there, but it's much harder. Yes, I agree, that's the American system, they call it affirmative policy or something. Well, it's too late in the day for us to think of that, because these are given. To take it back in a democracy is tough, so we can make it redundant. That's what I suggested. Yes?
Dr. Swamy, we are limiting to only 2 more questions due to lack of time.
Yeah. You're the boss, you decide.
Thank you, I'd like to recall that. We have Lav Kumar here with a question. The other question, I'll just come around. Please have your thoughts collected so that it doesn't go very verbose. Thank you.
Dr. Swamy, I'm a big fan. Like you said, my name is Lav Kumar. I had a different question in mind, but to the credit of my Sikh friend there, I will separate the Hindu from Sanatan Dharma.
Yeah.
So I think Sanatan Dharma is a religion of acceptance. You will agree with that. I wanted originally I had this question that I'll ask you to define an Indian, and if everybody in your family is Indian. But my question now is, should a Sanatan Dharmi dislike Islam, or do you dislike Islam because what they did to the Parsis in Iran?
I have no dislike for any religion, and it's meaningless. The question is that my opponents don't want others to see the logic of what I'm saying. So they will just say hate speech. Now, for instance, I give you an example. I argued in the Supreme Court that a masjid is not a religious place but a place to read namaz. And masjid can be demolished. Masjid can be shifted. And I produced instances from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, from Yemen, so many others, which clearly show that, for instance, in Saudi Arabia, there practically every day demolishing some masjid or shifting it. And I asked them, once they even demolished a masjid built on the direction of Muhammad, called Bilal Masjid in Makkah. So I asked the Saudi Arabian ambassador that, how did you do this? He said, well, for us it's a place to read namaz, and namaz can be read anywhere. It can be read on the road, it can be read in the drawing room, it can be read in an aeroplane. So this is only a convenient place to assemble, and that we build it, and then we find another convenient place, we shift it there. Now, if I say that in India, demolition by a mob of Babri Masjid is a criminal case, it's going on. I'm not on that. But there was a temple there that has been established by the Archaeological Survey of India. And I say the masjid, we are not against the masjid, but you build it somewhere else. But I can't build a temple anywhere else, because temple is built after Prana Pratishtha Puja, which means God has entered the idol and God becomes the owner. That's why there's no such thing as a owner or a supervisor of a temple. We have only trustees. And therefore, that Ram temple was built by Prana Pratishtha Puja. It shall remain forever a temple. That is the law. And that law has been accepted by even the House of Lords in a case which I had, as law minister, got filed in getting one antique from a temple, stolen from a temple, to come back. So there what you do, you can't answer my arguments. So you say, oh, he's saying Islam is not a religion. I never said Islam is not a religion. I said masjid is not a religious place. So this kind of twisting takes place. But I've decided that, I'm not going to be cowed by this. And I'll continue to say that. In fact, my house, every religion is represented. My wife is a Parsi. I have a Jewish sister-in-law. I have a son-in-law who is a Muslim. But nobody ever mentions it, because they feel that it will contradict the image that they have built of me as a Hindu fanatic, Hindu terror. The only person to whom I am committed to show that I am Hindu terror is P. Chidambaram. Because he tried to put me in jail when he was Home Minister for an article I wrote in DNA to say that the way to combat Islamic terrorists is to tell the Muslims that their DNA is Hindu. That is the same as the Hindus. And therefore they are descended from Hindus, they are not descended from Gori and Ghazni. On that basis they contrived a case, but of course I know the law so well, so I went to court and got it quashed. But he had said in the complaint that I was part of the Hindu terror. So now I said, I will show him what Hindu terror really is. So this is the difficulty in our discourse. People are not willing to discuss. So then I only talk to the people who want to listen. That is the only difference. But otherwise, I have nothing against any religion, and because we as Hindus believe all religions lead to God. And by the way, Sikhism also believes that, Buddhism also believes that, the Mahayana Buddhism, that is. So I don't think that it's the Islam which says either my way or the highway, which is something that they have to explain, not me.
Sorry, question?
Swami Namaste. My name is Rohit, and my question is, as BJP has completed 3 years now in India, the very first question is, how do you rate their last 3 years? And what do you think are their chances of winning 2019? And one of your favorite topics, what would be the new proposed date for Ram Mandir?
Oh, date.
Sorry, this is the last question.
This is the last question, okay. There were 3 questions, but 3 last questions. I'll start with the easiest one, that is the date for Ram Temple. The Supreme Court has decided on my pleadings that they will hear this matter from the 5th of December. They were ready to hear it right away, But the Muslim parties, which is the Sunni Waqf Board, they have said that there are lots of Persian documents which they want translated, and they needed time for that. So after they made a big noise about it, so they said, all right. So 5th December is the last date. The next date of hearing. And probably from that date onwards, or maybe after one adjournment perhaps, we will have the hearing on a day-to-day basis. Now, one new development has taken place, that, and that was because of my research, that this masjid was built by the Commander-in-Chief of Babar, and he was a Shia, and he made it into a Shia masjid, and every masjid has a mutwali, who means a supervisor, which is hereditary. And that mutwali even today lives in somewhere near Ayodhya, not in Ayodhya, but somewhere, and he is a Shia. So how did the Sunni Waqf Board enter the picture? So I spoke to the Shias, with whom I have very good relations, and they told me that this, once in 1944, they got some small city civil court to pass an order that Babri Masjid can also be regarded as a Sunni masjid, and we were too weak because the Shias are in smaller numbers, and we were too weak to challenge it, and so it is going on. So after a little encouragement, the Shia Waqf Board has now filed a petition saying that the Sunnis are all bogus imposters. We are the real owners, and their petition has been filed in the case. And they have also added another paragraph saying that even if the Supreme Court gives us Ram Janmabhoomi as our land, we shall hand it over to the Hindus to build the masjid, and we will build a temple, and we will build a masjid somewhere else. So I have weakened the case of this. Second is, I have an argument which nobody can reject, not even the Supreme Court can reject. I say, under the Constitution, I have a fundamental right to worship in the place where Ram was born. And the place where Ram was born is what we call as faith, or in Hindi or Sanskrit we call as astha. So faith is the one which Supreme Court cannot decide. If a large number of people feel that Ram was born here, then it is accepted that Ram was born there. So there is a site there where Ram was born, and on that temple stood, which they demolished and built a masjid on it. The Allahabad High Court has accepted this point of view, but now it's an appeal in the Supreme Court. So I'm saying I have a fundamental right to have a temple there and worship there. Now the Sunni Waqf Board has filed a petition to say that this property belongs to us because Babur conquered it. They don't say that masjid is a religious place. They cannot say, because it's not a religious place. Masjid is a place for assembling the Muslims for namaz. So their only claim is property. That this property is ours because Babur captured it, and 500 years it is with us, and therefore it is our property by what is called as adverse possession. Now they are in a trap, because I am saying I have a fundamental right, and they are saying that we have a right to property. Right to property is not a fundamental right under our constitution, it's an ordinary right. And the Supreme Court has held that whenever on an issue the fundamental right and the ordinary right clashes, the court shall decide in favor of the fundamental right. And therefore, the very first day I said, you don't have to hear them, just decide whether I have a fundamental right. And if you decide that I have a fundamental right, then they are out of the court. But the judge, Chief Justice, felt that No, not so fast. Let's hear them, no problem. I don't mind hearing them. And if you want a new date, I can't speak on behalf of the Supreme Court, but from what I know is the material, and I know the mood of the courts in these matters, I would expect somewhere around between May and middle of August, we should get an order in our favor to build the temple. Okay. Now there was a third question, I think. You're back. Okay. What is the second other question?
How do you rate the BJP, the work?
2019 we are definitely winning.
Good.
Not because of anything specific that this policy is wonderful, that policy is wonderful. No, we are not winning. We didn't win 2014 because Narendra Modi was the only issue. It was not. There were three issues. Narendra Modi's personality as a man who did a lot of good in Gujarat. The second issue was anti-corruption. And that is still intact just now. Because not a single charge of the Congress or any opposition has come against any BJP ministers in the central government. All right, not a single charge. 3 years have gone by. So, and I'm not looking inwards, so there's no problem that I'm only saying that is Congress' responsibility to find out if any of our people are corrupt. My responsibility to find out what the Congress people are doing. Okay, so as an insider, you are no threat from me, I can tell you that. Unless they attack me, somebody attacks me, then I will take my revenge. But the fact is that one important factor. Second, we analyzed in 2014 because Modi had appointed a committee called Strategic Action for Lok Sabha, and I was made the chairman. So I studied the electoral results and came to the conclusion that what in simplest form, that Hindus were getting divided and the minorities were getting united. So whether we can reverse the process of uniting the Hindus and dividing the minorities. So we devised this Hindutva thing, in which, by the way, though it's not in religious terms, but in terms that we are all one people and so on, the Sikhs and the Buddhists and the Jains are also included in that. And we found that this process of campaigning, that we are all one people, that had united the Hindus to the point where our maximum vote of the past, being 21% of the electorate, rose to 31%. Plus our NDA partners added another 8%. So with 39% vote, we got absolute majority. And that process of Hindutva has continued. And in the meantime, we have managed to divide the minorities. This time in UP, we made an experiment. We did not give a single ticket for the assembly election to a Muslim, because we didn't find anybody qualified. It's not our fault. They should have sent some qualified people to ask for a ticket, but we didn't find. So we said we'll tell public openly that we have not found anybody suitable for our candidacy. So we did not give a single ticket to any Muslim, and yet we won 75% of the seats in UP. And there are 125 seats in UP Assembly where Muslims are the dominant factor. Yet we won 86 of those. What was the reason? We said we'll abolish triple talaq, and all the Muslim women voted for us. Soon we divide Shias and Boras and Khojas and Barelvis and so on, and we'll finally be left with Wahhabi Sunnis, and they will be not more than 5%. and we can deal with the minority problem without difficulty. We don't have too much problem with the Christians, and particularly Syrian Christians and others. The fanatic Christians are a very small number. Anyways, Christians are only 2%. But anyway, even in those Christians, we have now made one minister of urban development who is a Christian. So the Christians now being threatened by the Islamic IS forces in Kerala, they are also now coming with us. So I am sure that because of Hindutva and the anti-corruption campaign, by itself will be sufficient for us to win the 2019 election, and probably with a larger majority than we got in 2014. And therefore we have the luxury of making fools of ourselves in GST and demonetization and so on. It does not work. Demonetization didn't affect our UP elections at all. And partly thanks to the fact that we are able to divide the minorities also. So the short answer to your question is, don't worry about 2019, worry about 2029. Because we are going to last that long, that's what I think.
What about Southern States?
Me? What will I do in the cabinet? I've already been twice in the cabinet. And both times with Narasimha Rao as well as with Chandrasekhar, the general impression was that I was running the show. Now Modi is not a chap who likes that, you see. So I never jhagda with him in the first day. It will be better if he has this being proposed now. It may not happen, but I can tell you that there is a proposal that I should be brought in as an advisor. And that will help me fight the court case also. If I'm a cabinet minister, I can't fight and I can't send Sonia Gandhi to jail in national level. Chidambaram. Now tell me, you want me to be a cabinet minister? If you say yes, I think you're a congressman.
What about Southern States?
She's a dictator, she says no. Tamil Nadu, ninga Tamil She says no. Tamil Nadu women are the ones who are running the show. You are a Tamil from Hyderabad. Anyway, don't worry, Tamil Nadu will come out of this. Tamil Nadu younger generation are all for national outlook. And it's only a matter of 2-3 years. There'll be the demographic change, and change will come. Okay.